all I know is what I see, and what I see, I like it. I like the on-field product. I like how he leads, how Jordan made the reference to how he's been leading, that locker room guy in the offseason, which is true. I'm all in on him. I'm all in on him.
And I wanted to just go over his stats last year because people forget how effective he was. He had 576 yards, averaging 5.1 yards a carry.
He went up like 500? Wow.
Yeah, he had almost 600. And the thing is, he had what, like 2 or 3 50-plus yard runs taken away?
Yep, he did.
And he's not a home run hitter like Jalen Knighton is, but he's the guy that is just a workhorse, and he is a tank. Like, he is a big guy. I think Coach Feely or someone mentioned him as one of the guys who made the biggest strides in the weight room this past offseason. And that's saying something because even last year, Cam was like, he's a big guy.
I'm looking at, and I don't know because every site's different, but I'm looking at College Football Reference right now. Mm-hmm. That website has him listed as 5'10", 201. I happen to think that he's over that 201, maybe closer to 210. But I mean, I'm leaving class one day in the spring semester and I see him and I'm like, this little guy, oh, that's Cam, and he is exactly what you said. His damn legs look like tree trunks. He's a freaking tank. And the thing is, he can move. Remember how Tyrone Moss looked? He's a more chiseled version of Tyrone Moss.
Yeah, he's a quicker Tyrone Moss.
Yeah.
That's a very good comparison. A Broward County legend right there. R.I.P.
There you go.
And Kay, I just have a few more questions. Sorry, the questions keep flowing whenever you're on the show, man.
Keep them coming, man.
The linebacker room. So Bradley Jennings tweeted the other day how he is healthy and ready to go. I can't remember if you were a big fan of him or Wayman Steed or Joyner, one of the other linebackers. Yeah, absolutely. So where do you see this linebacker room going? Because I know we've talked about it a lot. Obviously, you have Zach McCloud, and then you also have Brooks and Huff. Outside of that, how do you see this linebacker room showing out?
I'm not as dark on it as a lot of people are because, I mean, that's one of the position groups that going into the spring game that we never had. I mean, there's a lot of injuries in that room. I do think Zach's going to start, okay? The other guy that I have starting is going to be Brooks. I think he's going to start. And the other thing about the linebacker room is that Miami's only going to be playing 2 linebackers at a time. Remember that, because that strikers is a striker. It's 2 linebackers, so the depth at linebacker really shouldn't worry everyone as much as they're worried about, because we're playing 2 guys at a time. Sometimes we may even have 1 linebacker on the field, depending on how many DBs we have out there. But the thing with the linebacker room this year, and I'm not breaking any news here, there's going to be way more speed on the field. Everybody loved Shaq. Everybody loved Pinckney, and for good reason. But they're dated linebackers. If this was 10, 12, 15 years ago, they both would have been first-round picks because they're downhill. They're thumpers. Yeah, they got that sideline speed, but not like Sean Spence, not like what's his name from Miramar that came in with Tracy Howard. Forgetting his name, but that's the speed that Huff brings. That's the speed that Brooks brings, and I think we're going to see a lot of Huff. I just don't know how much playing time he's going to get over a guy with experience like McCloud. And even though Brooks didn't have that many snaps, they're more than what Huff did. But that ultra speed linebacker package, you got to be looking at Huff and Brooks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with you that, because we're only playing the 2 linebackers, that depth shouldn't be as much of a concern as some people see it. However, on the inverse, all of our depth is unproven, and a lot of our depth has injury history, which is what makes me concerned. Because you're right, we only need 4 or 5 dudes, to make the whole season go by smoothly. However, I mean, what if some of this injury history strikes up again, and then, one of the only guys that we have I don't want to say names, just because I've never seen these dudes, but say we have only 4 dudes, but one of them ends up being a bust. I mean, we've never seen most of these guys play real minutes, or a large amount of minutes. That's my concern right there, is like, what if there's only a few that can get on the field and they end up just not being as good as we wanted them to?
And you have a legitimate concern, but you know what? That's where the whole defensive side, the whole aspect of a team defense comes in, because you want to know what's going to make for these linebackers to look great. A dominant ass defensive tackle, which wasn't the case. Miami's defense, for as good as it was last year, because it was what, top 15, top 20. It was great. It's just in moments that we needed to get off the field, 4th and 17. Miami sucked in 3rd and longs, which is incomprehensible. I don't understand how that happens. But to answer your point, if just one defensive tackle, and it should be Nesta because of he's the most talented defensive tackle on. If just one defensive tackle steps up to make life easier for these linebackers, say one is consistent enough and plays well enough to get the eye of opposing offensive coordinators saying we need to double that guy on the line, okay, then that's all these linebackers need, okay? Ray Lewis, when he lost Tony Siragusa, all right, he said, I need a playmaking defensive tackle in front of me. Fast forward, they draft Halolinata, and all this Ray Lewis talk of he's losing a step all of a sudden goes away, okay? Because he has a guy that makes life easier for him. That's going to be key for these linebackers.
Well, and also, I mean, think about those linebackers for the Canes in the early 2000s. I mean, Vilma and DJ Williams were able to run free because you had Vince Wilfork up there. And even in 2017, you saw what McLeod, Quarterman, and Pinckney were able to do because you had McIntosh, you had Norton. And so I like that you brought that up, because I think people are underselling how much we need Nesta Silvera this season. I mean, because John Ford and Jordan Miller are they're solid defensive tackles, but they're not and they may prove me wrong, but they're not game changers like a Gerald Willis was. They're not game changers like a Vince Wilfork was. I think Nesta, and I think we all believe this, that he can be that kind of a player. And last year he flashed that, but I think a lot of people are kind of underselling his importance this year, because if he can shut down the middle, that'll solve so many problems for our linebackers.
You want to get pissed off really quick, fellas? You want to get mad really quick, or disappointed, whatever it is? Going back to your point about 2017, okay? RJ McIntosh had, by himself, from the defensive tackle spot, 12.5 tackles for loss. All right, he had 2.5 sacks. I'm going to read to you the tackles for losses last season from our defensive tackles only. Pat Bethel, 5.5. John Ford, 3.5. Jordan Miller, 2.5. Chigozie Naruka, 1. And Nesta, 1. That's 13.5 between 5 defensive tackles. When RJ McIntosh, which is the last time we had a very good, consistent defensive tackle, had 12.5 in 2017. You want to know how many Kendrick Norton had as the second highest? He had 6.5. We need that. It's huge for the linebackers. It'll make things. It takes away the chances of them getting doubled, because Ray Lewis was getting doubled when Tony Siragusa was gone, and it kind of limited his effectiveness.
Well, and it'll also take a lot of the pressure off Rousseau and Roche, because we are like putting all of our cards on them to have both of them having like 15 sack seasons, which I just don't think is going to happen. And I don't know. I think Jordan brought up his worry about the defensive tackles a few weeks ago, and I can't get it out of my head, man. So, but I mean, that's really like, the show has been so positive up until then, but
sorry.
This is one of the, I'm not worried about the Hurricanes defense, because I just don't worry about a Manny Diaz defense. They're going to be a top 20 force in the country. I think they could be a top 10 if Rousseau, Roche, and Phillips are able to do what we expect them to do. But I mean, we need them, man. Like, we need them to be like 2018, 2017. We need to get the, I don't know if we're going to have the turnover chain this year, but we are going to need to force turnovers, because that's how we won so many games in 17.
Yeah, man. But to answer your point, Jordan, like, your concerns are legit. Like, what happens if said guy gets down and, then there's no experience? Then, Look, I hate to sound cliche, but it's next man up, man. These guys are here for a reason. I mean, you look at the guys; they're all fast. Brooks, Huff, Flag, Steed is a thumper with some speed. Cave has some speed. All of those guys that I just mentioned, except for Brooks, don't have any snaps. So I get it. Ryan Ragone may see some big time snaps. I mean, he was huge in getting King over here, being from Houston, but Jennings doesn't have any snaps. Joyner was a big deal when we got him. He doesn't have much. So yes, that's a concern. But I kind of put it back to the receivers position. It can't be that hard. I've never played football at college level, but you're a linebacker. You know what your assignments are. Dia's defense is not complicated. If they get just one defensive tackle to step up with our ends, I just don't see it being that much of an issue.
Yeah, man. I appreciate your optimism. I have a hard time being optimistic. I'm like a bipolar Canes fan in that some days I'm running around my house like jumping up and down screaming 11-1. And then, but then when people ask me about the roster, I'm like, oh, well, I don't know. Our defense kind of sucks, like.
Well, hopefully
I'm all over the place.
A little better.
Yeah,
I'm all over the place.
We and people forget. Our schedule really isn't that difficult. Like, I know I like to be negative on here and saying that, like, yeah, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, those road games will be tough. Va Tech, obviously tough, but realistically, and even more so last year, there's no reason why they can't win at least 9 games. Because if they can't win at least 9 games, I think Manny needs to get out. That's just my opinion.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I was saying all before last year, though, was there's no reason we shouldn't win at least 6 games, and we did, so.
I got news for you guys. And this is an old, I'll retweet it just to piss some more people off. But 8 wins that I hope do not happen. 8 wins is good enough for Manny to come back next year. For several reasons.
I don't know, man.
For several reasons. But low key, and it really shouldn't be, other than, because I really think that Michigan State's going to be a win. Other than Florida State, yeah, North Carolina may decide the division, but nobody's talking about Virginia Tech. I get it. They beat us last year, but they weren't a bad team last year. They were way better than I thought they would be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's another game, and it's at Lane Stadium this year. So
in November.
So who knows what their record's going to be? Let me see what their schedule is. Whatever. I'll pull it up later. But
and Va Tech is a team that especially in Blacksburg, that is a tough place to play. I can't remember too many times besides like 2 years ago, and then that season where Kaya and Duke Johnson just went crazy on them. But other than that, I can't remember too many times that we just went into Lane Stadium and it was an easy game.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I think that by November, a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this. I think that it's going to be close to a full stadium, even with everything going on. And and like you said, a lot of people aren't talking about Virginia Tech, but I went into last year's game because they had just gotten beat by Duke by like 40 at home. Yeah. I remember you and I were literally in the parking lot at Hard Rock Stadium last year, walking into the stadium saying, yeah, it's going to be, no doubt about it, we're going to win this game. And I almost left in the first quarter. Like, they're just a team. There's so many teams like that we play. North Carolina, Georgia Tech, those 3, even Virginia, like, you never know what you're getting with them. You never know what kind of game they're going to play and how close it's going to be. And that game in November, everyone's talking about this North Carolina game, but that November game in Virginia Tech, I think that will probably decide the Coastal Division.
Well, here's their schedule before they meet us. They, in order, in chronological order, Liberty at home, Penn State at home, Middle Tennessee is their first road game, okay? Then they come back home to play North Alabama. I didn't even know that was a school, okay? Then they host Georgia Tech again. All of these are home games, and they go on the road. They go to Chapel Hill, then Boston College at home, then at Louisville, at Pitt, and then Miami. They probably will have a loss or two